The silver price at $17 per ounce. Is it possible? I've been receiving several now messages from people telling me that the price of silver is heading below $20 per ounce. Now, we talked about this mid last week, that we're sitting right now with about a $24 silver price. We're going to see one of two numbers first. We're either going to go $4 higher to 28 or $4 lower to $20 per ounce. I personally just can't envision the price of silver getting to $20. We're going to get to one of those numbers first. That's a reality. That's a fact, guys. That's like taxes, death, and everything else. From where we are right now with $24 silver, at some point in the future, we're either going to have $28 silver or $20 silver. And now I'm getting a barrage of messages from people telling me and laying out a bit of a case as to why we could see silver as low as $17. And hey, everybody's entitled to their opinion. You are entitled to your opinion just as much as I or anyone else, but I just have a hard time envisioning the silver price getting down. Now, I will say this. Let's do a quick check on the silver and gold market right now. I have silver pulled up. It is $23.77. I think it's just absolutely even. And it just started trading here within the last, hour or so. Let's take a quick look at gold and see where gold is. Bear with me. I'm on the bat phone here. Okay, we have gold up $1. I was speaking with Don the Brain via email earlier today, and he pointed this out. We were thinking that we could see a smackdown tonight. It still may come. I want to give you a little bit of a warning. We're not talking about a smackdown on the silver price down to $17 per ounce, but one of those days where maybe we go down 30 or 40 or more cents per ounce in silver, and gold gets whacked $17, $22, $14, whatever it may be. Why? Because the powers that be still have a vested interest in suppressing the price of gold and silver. And they're going to continue using whatever methods they can to suppress the price of the metals. Why? Because silver and gold are competition to the U.S. dollar. They're competition to the euro. They're competition to the yen. So the big central planners, the big central banks in the Western countries will likely still have an interest in seeing the price of silver and gold beat down. Now, we know there's other major forces at play working against them. You know what? Let's talk about a couple of them right now. This works perfectly. I have an article. This is not old, but maybe 3 or 4 weeks old. But it's 5 signs that gold and silver, for that matter, will increasingly flow to the east. Okay, very interesting. And I'm going to synthesize it because that's what we like. The central banks of the states of the east are amongst the strongest buyers of gold, and we know the east is a strong buyer of silver as well. We've got record central bank buying in the east, right? We've heard that ad nauseum. Looking at the BRICS, we also see a striking overlap with central banks from 4 of the 5 BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, bought a cumulative amount of 2,932 tons of gold between the year 2010 and 2022. These are the forces acting against the Western forces, right, that are trying to use the COMEX and the LBMA to manipulate down the price of gold and silver. We know that holdings of U.S. Treasuries are continued to be reduced, okay? The BRICS countries, which now include Iran, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, and Egypt, right? We know that those countries are reducing the level of their treasury holdings. They're moving away from the dollar. They're moving to gold because the only thing they trust less than the U.S. dollar are themselves. What do they go back to? Gold, silver, right? So you're going to tell me that we're going to get $17 silver, that gold is going to get, it can happen, right? You know, and I'm very transparent about this. Whatever I'm telling you right now is just my opinion. I base it upon a ton of research. It's what I believe, but I could be wrong. I have occasionally been wrong in the past, okay? This is where it gets real interesting. The Eastern countries, I'm going to read this to you, and I'll read it to you quickly, okay? Basement dwellers, the Eastern countries are expanding their infrastructure for precious metals trading. However, the East is not only stocking up on gold and mining gold itself on a large scale. China and Russia have ranked amongst the top 3 producing nations for years. So they are already producing a ton of precious metals. Countries such as China, the United Arab Emirates, and even Russia are expanding their gold trading infrastructure, right? Because the price of silver and gold have had, the COMEX and the LBMA have had a stranglehold on it over the last number of years. We know that, okay? This is to establish a permanent infrastructure to detour of gold and silver trading from the gold and silver tradings in the West, such as London, New York, and Zurich. This testifies to the changing understanding of roles. The East is increasingly no longer seeing itself as a customer of the Western infrastructures, but offering an infrastructure themselves. And what do we mean by that? We mean that in the past, the East, if they wanted to buy silver, they wanted to buy gold, if they wanted to sell silver or gold, they would typically do it via London, New York, or Zurich, right? The COMEX and the LBMA, the London Bullion Market Association, the oldest and biggest gold market in the world, which, by the way, just put out a press release last week stating that they had a new all-time high on gold price at the LBMA, but that's besides the point. The Eastern countries are saying, you know what, guys? You can have your markets. You know, we don't believe in your price, and we're seeing materially different prices in the Eastern exchanges than what are being quoted in the Western exchanges. They're losing the battle. In that regard, it's not unfortunate because I'm a true proponent of the benefits of silver and gold. Absolutely. So I don't think it is too bad that the West, I'm part of the West, I live in the West, but I don't think it's too bad that the West is losing control of silver and gold. And you know why? That's okay. Because the founding fathers of this country, as we've discussed ad nauseum, what we're talking about, we are being real, true patriots. We're following what's in the United States Constitution. Thank you for that super chat, Mr. Welder Guy. Wow, $50 silver. You got it, brother. It's going to happen sooner than you realize. Okay. Look, if you want to get your hands on some silver gold, let's real quickly say thank you, all of us, to our channel sponsor, Pimbex. Okay. They make this broadcast possible. And I just want to make a little recommendation. You might want to consider checking them out next time you go to buy some silver, gold, or platinum. They're a fast-growing online bullion dealer, and they're growing fast because they've got great customer service, they've got great selection, and they've got great prices. Don't believe me? Find out for yourself. Throw them into the mix next time you are looking to get yourself some metal. Okay, Pimbex, Pimbex.com, and they can help you with IRAs as well. You want to get the most metal for your money, check out Pimbex. Okay, so the East is building their own metals infrastructure, trading infrastructure. Guys, this is so huge for the price of silver and gold as we move into this decade that we're going into right now, because for the last 5 decades, the West has completely controlled the price of silver and gold. There are people out there who spent their entire careers investigating, fighting for you, fighting for me to prove that the price of the metals was manipulated. We know just last year that we had convictions leveled against JP Morgan traders for the manipulation, spoofing of the gold and silver price, manipulating the price. Now, the Eastern countries are saying, enough is enough. Okay, we're done. You can say whatever you want about what the price of silver and gold is, but you know what? We produce more of it. We have more of it. They've been buying it hand over fist. We think that we can do our own pretty good job of establishing what a real price is. True price discovery. So you're going to tell me that silver is going to go to $17 per ounce? Really? Okay. Look, anything is possible in this day and age, right? I won't, but I'll tell you this, we're going to have to pretty much be in a depression for that to be the case. And if that's the case, and we are in a depression, $17 per ounce for silver is actually relative in real value, right? Because prices would crash, and they're not going to let that happen. We covered that this morning, right? They're going to inflate, they're going to devalue the currency, and that will make for much, 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 much higher in nominal terms, but we want also real terms, much more value, much higher price for the metals. Okay? Hey guys, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's free. You can come back to the basement anytime you like. This channel is about you, right? If you're into silver and gold, and if you like to make friends, you like to talk about silver and gold, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. We're shooting for 34,000 subscribers by Valentine's Day. We'll see if we get there, or if my little heart is broken on Valentine's Day. But my heart will never be broken, because you know what? What's really cool is right now you, I'm pointing at you. You're here with us right now in the basement, talking about what we love to talk about, okay? This is interesting. The Shanghai Gold Exchange and Shanghai Futures Exchange, cooperation between the Chinese and Russian gold markets, and we're going to talk about Russia more here in a minute. For some time now, China and Russia, wow, is that another super chat? Metal Seer, I wonder if I could offer an ETF based on Ron's. Yeah, that would be a good one. Let's do it, right? Thank you for the super chat. Working hard to link their gold markets through cooperation. The Shanghai Gold Exchange and the Russian Financial Authority, the National Financial Association. The NFA is a Russian professional association representing the entire Russian financial sector, including Russian precious metals markets. The Russians and the Chinese are working together to form their own market for silver and gold. Okay? It even says here, in the face of Western sanctions, Russian gold exports to China have already surged. But wait, there's more. Private gold demand is shifting to the east, right? Private wealthy Eastern investors are buying up all the gold. The price of gold in currencies of the east has increased significantly, okay? As of the end of, this was September. Listen to this. As of the end of September, gold was 15% higher in Indian rupees than at the beginning of 2022, okay? Higher in Chinese renminbi, 34%. What they're telling us, guys, gold is at all-time highs. We can't say this year yet, because we're only one day into the year. Hold on, I'm drinking my RC Cola. But we have gold, who sets the tone, making all-time highs in Australia, in China, in India, in Canada, okay, everywhere. We have gold making new all-time highs. On the London Bullion Market Association, the LBMA put out a press release, okay, stating, and I should read to you what this lady, you know what, I'm going to find it. Let me read to you what the actual person from the LBMA, the London Bullion Market Association, let me tell you what she said. I can find this. Here it is. I'm getting better with this technology. This was from Reuters, okay? London gold price benchmark breaks an all-time high on the London, the biggest, all right, I need to slow down here. Here's a quote from Ruth Crowell, who is the LBMA's chief executive officer, the London Bullion Market Association. Quote, I can think of no clearer demonstration of gold's role as a store of value than the enthusiasm with which investors across the world have turned to the metal during the recent economic and geopolitical turmoils. We're going to talk some scary, before we wrap up tonight, I've got 3 scary things going on geopolitically right now that we're going to talk about. So stay with me on this one. It's very interesting. Okay. So we've got gold at all-time highs. Let me just read this, and I need to give some credit here. This was from, I believe, Ronald, Stofferle from Gold Switzerland. Here's his conclusion. Sit down, have a drink of your RC Cola, whatever you're drinking tonight. I hope you're doing well. I appreciate you being here. Before we do the conclusion, I got to ring the bell 10 times. I can't believe we have 350 people on a Snap live stream. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you and being part of the basement. It's important. Okay. Everybody's important. I don't care who you are, where you are, right? If you may be having a really cruddy day, maybe you're having an okay day. It's the first day of the year, right? Holidays are tough for a lot of people. Nonetheless, you are important. You, okay? And I'm going to ring the bell for you. I always ring it 10 times when we get to 100 thumbs up. Few extra rings for the new year. Are you ready for this? Listen closely, because the shift in demand from the west to the east can be observed not only amongst governments or government-related entities, this is shift of silver and gold, but also among institutional and private investors, silver and gold. Gold is flowing to where it is most valued and where economic prosperity and savings rates have increased. Interesting. In the medium term, the shift in demand should therefore find support from the higher growth prospects in Asia and the Middle East. Without money, no music. This is how the vernacular formulates this economic truism in German. And excuse me. And as the IMF's most recent economic growth forecast indicates, the sub-region of emerging and developing Asia will grow at a projected 5.2% this year and 4.8% next year, while the West will grow much less strongly. This will also lead to a shift in influence on pricing from the West to the East. Look, I don't say we don't like it. The Eastern countries, the BRICS Plus, from an economic perspective, from a population perspective, from a military power perspective, they are a force to be reckoned with. China is the second largest economy in the world. India and China. Do you know? Yeah, I haven't said this for a couple weeks. Some of you are newer here. The population of India is 1.4 billion people. The population of China is 1.4 billion people. Easy for us to remember. What do you get when you add 1.4 billion plus 1.4 billion? You got it right. You get 2.8 billion people. Expanding economies, expanding middle class. Not like in the United States, where the middle class, if you're like me and you're part of the middle class, you're an average Joe. I mean, hey, we're shrinking. In the United States, the middle class is getting decimated by Bidenomics, even though it's working. Yeah. But in China and India, their middle classes are growing and growing and growing. The Eastern countries are getting all the power. They're getting all the wealth. They took all the manufacturing jobs because of short-sighted decisions by our political leaders that allowed it to happen, right? It made some quick money for a number of people, I imagine. I wouldn't be surprised. But now they're growing and growing, and it's interesting because they also love their silver and gold. Look, you can't argue this point. You cannot argue this point. Well, you can, because you can argue whatever you want. But the reality is, the best years of this United States of America, where we really grew to be the great country that we are, right? Okay, the great years were when we were on the gold standard and when we had silver in our money. There's absolutely no arguing that point. Silver and gold built the United States of America. I would argue that post 1971, when President Nixon temporarily took the United States off the gold standard, sure, there might be some imaginary gains, and yeah, the internet came along and stuff like that, but really what built the country, built the wealth of the country, built the foundation, the backbone of the United States was silver and gold, right? When it was there, when the dollar was tethered, right? When the dollar was backed, when we were on the gold standard, that's when things really were good in America. That's when the middle class was expanding. That's when we were building what was to be the future for generation after generation. Now they say, right, the kids now, they're not going to have as good of a life as their parents. It really makes me sad. Does it make you sad to hear that, to think that? You know, sure, there will be exceptions, but that overall, that the children today, likely my children, will have a more difficult time just to achieve the level of lifestyle that I have or you have. It's not a good thing. It's not good. Okay. Now, as we head into the next year, I just want to mention two things that are going to be coming, and I know we don't like to talk about this, but I still think that it's important we are mentally prepared for the possibility. I'm not saying I'm predicting. I'm using the P word, possibility, not predicting, but the possibility for a depression. I don't think it's the likely outcome, but what scares me a little bit is nobody's talking about it. And we are set up for some very difficult times in 2024. If they want to make the right decisions in some ways, the difficult decisions that would lead us back to true prosperity for our children and our grandchildren, not the short-sighted, crazy stuff they've been doing for the last number of decades, right? Bailing out all the banks during the great financial crisis, you know, bailout here, bailout there, all that. If they really want to do what's right, then we're going to have some extremely difficult times in this country. I think it's a possibility, right? The depression word. Now, one thing that we need to keep our eyes on, the M2 money supply. That's like the real money supply that's out there in the economy. The latest reports that we're reading show us that the M2 money supply is shrinking. The only other times it's shrunk like that were in times of depression. So let's keep a close eye on what's going on with that, and it'll be interesting. The other big scary situation is as we go into next year, right, the lag effect. and it's been a couple of weeks since we talked about it, but there are more and more companies going bankrupt in the United States. Week by week by week. Why? One of the big reasons is the lag effect. It's not unlike if you took out an ARM. Remember ARM? Who remembers ARM loans? I'm 53 years old. I remember ARMs, right? I never got one. I was fortunate enough to have a financial background and not know that it was risky. An ARM loan, like on a mortgage, is when adjustable rate mortgage. Remember those? ARMs. Well, all these businesses that take out loans from banks, right? Lines of credit, blah, blah. They're usually 2 to 3 year terms. That means that's the period that the loan is good for. And they get kind of a set rate during those 2 to 3 years. They have to refinance. And we have got a wave of refinancings coming through, not just in the commercial real estate sector. We talked about that earlier today, how the banks are facing this trifecta of challenges in 2024, but businesses are going to need to refinance as well, and a lot of them just are not going to make it. So it is going to be absolutely crazy is about the best thing we can say as we go into 2024. If you're a company and you've borrowed $100 million from JP Morgan, right? And you did it 3 years ago, and JP Morgan assessed you, and you shopped around, and JP Morgan had the best rate. They offered you 4.5% on that $100 million that you owe the bank. When you go back now, right, in March or April or May to because you have to redo your loan, you're maybe looking at 7%, 8%, a doubling in a lot of situations of interest expense for companies. Sure, you could afford $4 million a year in interest expense, but maybe in break even, but maybe you can't afford $8 million, and that's why we're seeing a continued increase in the number of bankruptcies in the United States, and it could get super ugly as we head into next year. When we get to 200 thumbs up, that's how we show that our solidarity, right? That's our basement dweller high five. High five when you give a thumbs up. It's down there. It helps us get the word out to more people, and it helps me feel good. And I think it always feels good to do something nice. So do something nice. A lot of you have already. Give us a thumbs up, okay? We aren't going to stop talking about this. We are not going to stop talking about this. I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about right now, okay? We're going to talk about the most underappreciated and unfortunate factor that drives the gold and silver price higher, right? Geopolitical, not risk, geopolitical turmoil, geopolitical war, violence. Let's just quickly run through a couple of the recent headlines. I just was zipping through Zero Hedge. Here's a couple headlines of what's gone on in the last 24 hours. Iran, okay, and this is a powder keg, guys. This is scary. What's going on in a potential of war, all-out war in the Middle East with Iran involving the United States. Iran dispatches. Sometimes I can't say words. Iran dispatches warships to the Red Sea. The Houthis warn of repercussions after U.S. forces kill rebels during Maersk ship attack. Okay? So Iran is dispatching warships to the Red Sea. I think we have some warships in the Red Sea. I think there's like bombings and drone attacks going on in the Red Sea. Does it sound like an unfortunate situation, a powder keg situation? It does to me, okay? We're staying on top of it here, but even more. Hamas fired New Year's Eve rocket barrage at Tel Aviv. That means they fired a rocket barrage into Israel timed for midnight. Hamas fired at least 27 rockets at the south and center of Israel in a barrage timed for midnight as Israelis celebrated the start of the new year. According to the Times of Israel, the Palestinian resistance movement launched 27 missiles. Air defense systems intercepted 18, while 9 fell in open areas. Loud explosions from the intercepts boomed through the sky over Tel Aviv, where crowds of partiers celebrated the New Year's Sunday. Okay? Now, a lot of this was in response to apparently there was a bombing. At least 48 Palestinians were killed by Israeli strikes on Gaza City over the weekend, the health minister said, with many still buried under the rubble. After the explosion, we arrived at the scene of the strike and saw martyrs everywhere. So apparently the Israelis bombed. It was on Christmas, okay? Christmas Eve. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's horrible, okay? But it's going on. It's nothing we joke about. It's nothing we want to be as the backbone for higher precious metals prices, but it's going on. We're going to talk about Russia next, but let's thank our other channel sponsor, new sponsor, Fortuna Silver Mines, okay, they're a global producer of silver and gold. Okay, they've got some very interesting new projects in West Africa. They have projects in Argentina, Peru, Mexico. I'll be talking to you more about the company in the coming months throughout the whole year. You can check them out at fortunasilver.com. It's a stock that I've owned for years and years. I'm not giving financial advice. I'm not recommending you buy it. I'm just telling you what I do, and I think very highly of the management of the company, the quality of the organization. fortunasilver.com. Thank you. Let's move on. Okay, so that's Iran. The Red Sea situation is absolutely. But what about Europe? It seemed like the situation in Ukraine was cooling down until we hear this. Vladimir Putin vows Russia will, quote unquote, never back down in New Year's speech. We got to ring the cowbell. We got 200 thumbs up. Thank you, guys. This is incredible. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of the basement. This cowbell's for you. Huh? 200? I tell you why. Because we're going to get $2,500. We're going to get $2,600 gold. We're going to get $2,500 gold. We're going to get $85 silver. We're going to get $2,500 platinum. But I'll tell you, it's going to be a good day when we take the blindfold off the bear. That's the joke here in the basement for you new basement dwellers. I'm not a person. I love animals, all that good stuff. It's a joke, but I blindfolded the bear. And he has handcuffs on, and his blindfold comes off when we get to $2,500 gold. And I think it's going to be this year. I think it's going to be in May or before, right? I can definitely not be right about that. But based upon my research and my feelings about everything that's going on, that's what we'll see. We'll see about the $85 silver. I'll be happy this year if we can get into the 40s. It might take a little longer to get to $85 silver, but we'll see. Russian president, and it's no better. We have a war in Europe. Imagine if you and I were sitting around in your family room right now, but it was 5 years ago. We were having a cup of coffee, and I was introduced. I said, I'm Ron. I can see the future. And I told you 5 years ago that everything else that would be going on in the world, and then I said there's something else, okay? Well, actually, there's two things, but there's one more thing I got to tell you. We're going to have a all-out war in Europe with tens of thousands of people being killed. And it's basically going to be a war between Russia and the West. A proxy war is what they mean. Like, we aren't actually sending troops, but we send a bunch of weapons, technology, blah, blah, blah. Would you believe me? I mean, it just is not, the situation is not getting any better in Ukraine. We had the Ukrainians took out a Russian ship. The Russians bombed, serious bombing of Ukraine, and then Ukraine fired back at a border city that's within Russia and killed a bunch of Russian citizens. So Vladimir Putin, thank you, Metal Seer. Man, I thought Fortuna was wait a minute. Hold on a second. Let me see what he said. Uh-oh. Hold on here. Bear with me, guys. Technical difficulties. All right. Save the fish movement. Funny. Fortuna. No, Fortuna silver, which I believe in Spanish means fortune silver. So we've had this situation. Now Putin says this, right? His Christmas Eve speech. Russian President Vladimir Putin, in his year-end speech, an annual tradition, was widely reported to be somewhat muted in intensity this year, okay, coming the day after a Russian city of Belgorod suffered a single worst day of attack from Ukrainian forces since the war began. During the Saturday cross-border drone and missile attack, 24 Russians were killed and 108 injured. Russians, okay? The Ukrainians are bombing Russia. Putin And the address vowed that Russia would never back down and that national unity will be maintained at all costs. We have repeatedly proven that we can solve the most difficult problems and will never back down because there's no force that can separate us. So the Russians aren't backing down in Ukraine, okay? And the Ukrainians don't seem to be giving up either. War in Europe, war in the Middle East, which feels like to me, but you never know with these things, more of a powder keg situation than anything. Where do we think this all is headed, right? Do we really think that we can get $17 silver? Right? We know. I mean, I would say sure, maybe. I mean, anything is possible, so maybe. But likelihood, I say no, because when you look at the big picture of what's going on in the world right now, from a geopolitical perspective, but also from a perspective of fundamental changes in how silver and gold are being traded. Who is producing all the silver and gold? Who is taking solid, concrete steps to change the price discovery mechanism for silver and gold? The power structure is moving to the east. And when we look at the big picture just internally, domestically in the United States, from a fiscal perspective, from a monetary perspective, right? Our government is spending out of control from a fiscal perspective, from a monetary perspective. Guys, for some reason, we're all kind of brainwashed to think, oh, the Federal Reserve. Hey, I got news for you. Jerome Powell is no different than you or I. They're human. They don't know what they're doing. Okay. Do we need any more proof that they don't know what they're doing or that we shouldn't believe them than the fact that 3 years ago they were telling us that inflation was not a problem, nothing to worry about, then it was transitory, then it was temporary. They always have new words and acronyms, and it drives me up a wall, But people believe, and we all do. We all kind of think, oh, well, the Fed, the Fed. I mean, we're ahead of the curve. Most people are like, the Fed said this, the Fed said that, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Fed said inflation was not a problem. The Fed said it was temporary. The Fed said it was transitory. The Fed said 3 years ago, okay, right now, that they weren't going to raise interest rates for another 3 years. They weren't, or a year and a half, 2.5 years ago. They said they weren't going to raise interest rates till the end of 2023. Now we're at the end of 2023. They raised interest rates at a record pace, and now when they're supposed to be raising interest rates, according to the same Fed that said that 2.5 years ago, now they're talking about cutting rates. And we're supposed to believe these guys? I'm sorry. They don't know what they're doing. We know as much as they do down here in the basement, okay? Geopolitically, and that's what nobody gives this war and the safe haven status of gold enough credit. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. And that is a big deal and will continue to be a big deal as we head into the year. I'm finally starting to hear other people talk about it. Like, have you noticed that events that maybe used to happen once every 1 or 2 years now seem to be happening every week or every month, right? Things are happening much more quickly and at a much escalated level, a more extreme level. That's been the trend, right? It's that curve that goes up and up and up and up and up, and that it's continuing to go in that direction. So we got to buckle up. We got to be ready for a lot of excitement in 2024. I appreciate you joining me. My plan's to be back tomorrow. Take care of yourself. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for your support. Happy New Year, and I'll see you guys soon.